So please join me in welcoming a longtime Adept customer. I believe it's been about 9 or 10 years. They're doing a tremendous amount with Adept in terms of enterprise collaboration, project and product document control, publish wave, redlining, publish to Adept, all kinds of good stuff. Mark Hastings from Visa Lighting.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm humbled the fact that you want to actually listen to me, so I'm happy to have made that bar up here. Again, my name's Mark Hastings. I've been working at Visa Lighting for 30 years, a long timer, yes, and I totally love the company. We're very focused on product development and coming out with new things, and I'm the VP of product development, so that makes me really happy. Keeps me on my feet every year. Over the years, I've worked on a lot of implementations and processes developing for our company. Shortly after I was hired, we actually put in our first MRP system, which I'll talk about in a minute. I also led the implementation in 2009 of Adept, and at the same time, we put in an enterprise-level configurator and then did a huge overhaul on our MRP system at that time, too. So a lot of this gray hair, you know. I call it the full spectrum use of Adept, and I'm a very punny person. Okay. So brief history, and I know it's getting close to lunch, so hesitate to say that Tom Needles of Rippin' Good Cookies once owned us. So if you're hungering for a cookie, I'm sorry about that. As soon as he lost taste for lighting manufacturing, our current ownership, Wayne Oldenburg, purchased Visa Lighting. And then 1992, we put our first MRP system in, which is also when we had our first part number. Before that, we had a very skilled craftsman in the shop, and I'm sure some of you might relate to this. You know, you had the machinist book and hand sketches, and yeah, we need 4 feet of bar stock, can you order that for me? So, we were very unsophisticated back then, and have come a long way, especially with the use of Adept now. So we are an architectural specification grade lighting manufacturer. We make things that are several stories tall. We make things that are 23 feet big. We also make things that are that size, so just about anywhere. And by architectural specification, it means you're not going to find us at Home Depot or Menards. It's more ordered and designed through architectural firms and lighting designers and things like that. So we sell through a distribution of about 84 agents around the country and Mexico, Canada, to give people what they want. We're located on a 15-acre site in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, home of beer, brats, Harley, Summerfest, in case anybody ever came out to Summerfest, our big music festival. But it's a great place to live and work. We're a configured to order products company. We have about 860 some standard models. Every model is configured to order, so that means the specifiers choosing their level of light intensity that they want, the color rendering, whether it's RGB, if they want dimming, certain dimming protocols, things like that. The finishes on it is all specified. So every order being processed through goes through our configurator. And likewise, a lot of our CAD models are highly configured too. And I'm excited to hear about the things in SolidWorks coming out. Thank you very much. 25% of our business is also engineered to order. We do variations and customs. Our standard lead times for the standard products is about 4 to 6 weeks. And if you pay some extra money, we get it done in 10 days. When you go engineered variations, that's 8 to 16 weeks or so before we get things out the door. I'm fortunate to work in one facility, and unlike a lot of you, which I'm hearing have very complicated structures dealing with vendors and suppliers and different sites, we happen to be in one site, and our manufacturing facility is top-notch. We have fabricating, machining. If anybody saw metal spinning, taking sheets of sheet metal and rolling them over blocks to make beautiful trims and shapes like that. Also polishing, painting, and assembly and welding. So in addition to our shop, we have a vertically integrated front end. Their sales, our marketing, which you're seeing some of their fantastic videos up on the screen right now, along with our research, industrial design, my team, product development, and manufacturing engineering, plus purchasing and planning. So I would say a good cross-section of all of those departments are using Adept in some way, either through the Adept reviewer or getting notifications or seeing things or directly interacting on the client with CAD files and such. So what do we use Adept for? Yeah, a whole lot of stuff. So at the product level, we probably say a good 60 to 65% of our usage is in the CAD area. Our engineering staff doing things with SolidWorks files and configured assemblies and layouts and drawing files. We do have some legacy AutoCAD files that we still use it for. And primarily our shop is using Adept and it's serving our production drawings to the shop, along with our assembly work instructions in the assembly area. You can imagine all these configured products and 860 of them times, there's several millions of ways to put our products together. So there's an art form to those assembly work instructions. Tell just enough to get it to be built, but not too much where it looks wrong. So at the project level, we use it for our engineering project specifications, along with our product spec sheets. And those are two different things. The spec sheets are done by marketing and available on our website, which we use for our sales purposes. And then the project specifications are basically the scope of the projects that we're working on. Along with that, we use it for our field instructions that get automatically put onto our website and also printed with orders that are shipping. And then we use it for meeting minutes and our project management. So it's a full use of things just at the project level. At the enterprise level, we use it for our training documents. And we store our processes and standards and things like that in Adept, along with our meeting marketing images and configurator images for our configurator and through the website. One other thing I'll highlight a little bit later on is we went paperless with Adept on all our engineering change notices using their workflows. I can't talk about all that because I'll just run out of breath today. So I'm just going to focus on four main things. Training and processes. Jessica, your discussion today, I second that. I'm championing the training program. A lot of times when the Synergist staff comes out and you do the implementation, the entire organization gets this great training and stuff like that. But as you add new employees, they kind of get forgotten. It's always on the job. Oh, just click here, do that, and do this and do that. So we tried to make it a little bit more formalized. So why would you want to do that? Well, if you're onboarding new employees, it gives them immediate access to the documents and standards and policies that your company might have. Adept is great for searching, so you might as well get it to them early on. And I try to get that training done in the first 1 to 2 days that they've been at our facility. One of the cool things about Adept, and when you're training people, if you put yourself in the shoes of a new person coming in, they're always worried about ruining things. So we always say, you don't worry, you're not going to hurt anything. We can use versioning to get files back if there's something that's wrong with the one that you signed in. And we can always use security groups to prevent any kind of oopses that you might have. And in addition to that, we use workflows for all the important stuff. So, it can get partway there, but, if we find a problem, don't worry, it's not going to get into the system and cause problems. So one of the first things they're going to be doing is search for the training files. And we use some naming conventions. We start them all with process training. Very inventive, I know, but gets to the point. These training files have a hierarchy, so we'll have a parent-child relationship. We'll have an introductory and a content section. And in that section, we'll identify the department managers that have their individual training sections. So that way, the individual department managers can sign out those sections and edit them on their own without having this big, humongous 450-page document that, hey, I need ownership of that because I'm editing it. This gets it down to the department level, and you get a lot more buy-in and more control. So in the individual sections, Focusing on the Adept section in general, we'll have a tabulation of the files, and we'll give them a section ID so that people can navigate to them relatively quickly. I like to start out all the training with the goals. These would be pretty obvious for a lot of you. Doing the access and security to the Adept files, making sure the settings are right. It's so frustrating for a new employee who comes in and this doesn't work the way it seems, and then 3 weeks later somebody goes, huh, oh, I'll be right back, and they go do something and set their security group. Now can you see it? And they're like, what? I've been doing that for 3 weeks, and yeah. So we like to get that out of the way early on. The last 3 bullets are important. I like to have people demonstrate these things. Demonstrate searching, their work area, and integration with Outlook. We use email and ALS files quite a bit. But these are just 1-hour sessions, so this is just an introductory section. And then littered throughout all the other training files is more of the on-the-job training with Adept and how they're going to be using it in and out. So within that section, then we also jump out to another document, and those separate documents are where we put all the meat and potatoes. A little bit of a highlight for that document is just going through the basic functions, launching, looking at their settings, the layout of the windows, obviously new updates and things that might come along, how do they use their work areas, the use of the favorites, which I'm a big champion of, do go through a lot of searching tips, and then how we use our email communications using ALS links. And I also want to parrot what a few other people were saying about the Adept help is very powerful. So a lot of times at the end of the session, we say, okay, you're going to do something with that and get them comfortable with searching just in the Adept help. A lot of times they'll say, hey, go look at the glyphs that are out there. And I hate to call out Synergist staff, but doing research here, I started zooming in on some of these glyphs, and it's interesting that your pixels of your glyphs are actually smiling faces of Synergist staff. Janet, I did find the one, looked like a pool party, 1987. I won't tell anybody where that one is. Okay, so quick thing on our Redline processes. We use it for several methods. I'll just touch on a couple today. And for those of you who don't know, you have a host of Redline tools just through the Adept viewer. If you're using the native application launch, you won't be able to do this process. But it's nice in the fact that all the tools are right there, and I actually have a training section on how to redline documents. And when people are going through and using the tools, it makes it fairly easy to track who's doing what. If you've ever done hand sorting of files and markups on hand paper, if people aren't putting their initials there and dating it, you don't know who did what when. Using the Redline tools, you have a good hierarchy of who did what at what time, so you can see which comments are being related to each other or came the next day or the day after. So for redlining documents for the change notices in the shop, we'll be starting with a PDF file. And they'll be using the markup tools in the reviewer, and we try to keep things simple. I recognize a lot of people here are under audit authority with jurisdictions, and you have to show a lot of things. I am giving the perspective of a small company within all the walls and how you can do processes a little easier and streamlined if you don't have a lot of those burdens on you. Just by knowing who marked it up when, we know who to talk to. I mean, I'm 150 feet away from just about anybody in our facility, and I can just go ask them the questions. I know everybody's going like, oh, boy, I wish it was like that for me, but I benefit from that in our facility, so I take advantage of it. The nice thing about doing the red lines in this fashion is the PDF documents are actually the documents that are printing out on the work orders that are going through our shop. Because of that, the red lines also show up on that print. So when somebody submits a ECR request to us, the next operator doing that job all of a sudden sees, well, somebody already thought of it and it's in process. And then they can come and ask us if they need it expedited or not. product spec sheets, those are the marketing tools that I kind of showed you the demo of. We have a different process for that, and we use shared searches for this, and it works out really great. These are documents in an unchecked library, and we use a file naming convention. We'll just append the files with _prelim. Well, this is important because our configurator has been trained to generate the file name, and when that file name matches, it creates a link to the document out in the assembly for or over the website. By putting _prelim on it, A doesn't equal B, so the link is never created, so those files are protected and not seen by anybody. That saves us from moving files around to different libraries and such. So we set up a shared search just looking for _prelim, and voila, you have a whole list of documents that people have to take a look at. And the shared reviewers have a little bit of a timeline. We have a gentleman's agreement, okay, 3-4 days, sound good? And then everybody's expected to put their markups by that time. So it tends to be somewhat collaborative. We can bounce ideas off of each other and put Redline comments. And even though we're in one facility, I'd say a good 20 or so people have laptops and they'll be doing work at home and things. So a lot of times the redlining is nice and easy to do offline, when you're not being distracted with things right in the shop. So people are doing this at night. The cool thing about this process is once the source file is then changed and incorporates the red lines, okay, we just rename and remove prelim. That is then versioned over, we assume ownership, and all the versions in the stack retain those red lines. So with the viewer, you can see what was here, go through Adept, look at the other versions, and make sure that you captured all the markup tools that people were suggesting. So moving on, PublishWave. We use PublishWave quite a bit. These are 3 examples of the libraries that we use this on. Release CAD files is the source document for the engineering CAD documents that are going to the shop. And then the field instructions is another checked workflow. I'm really rocking here. Get out here. It has another workflow assigned to it, along with the manufacturing work instructions. So when PublishWave is engaged, we're taking the source file, going through PublishWave, creating a PDF, putting that into a production detail standards folder, and then the field instructions go into production details for the field instructions. And when we have the assembly work instructions, we're actually starting with Excel. But we do the exact same thing and create a PDF of that, and that goes into another details work instructions for the shop. The reason we do that is then these have another set of events that happen. We have a custom work order print PC, custom program that mines the information coming from our MRP system. So if we have a list of drawings for work order going out, Adept then goes and grabs those documents and prints them out along with the work orders. When we're looking at the field instructions, then those have an auto copy process that goes to the website server, so they're immediately available onto the website. And then the work instructions then are available to the configurator for the assembly floor. So touching base on our ECN processes, we use workflows pretty heavily. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'll give you a few examples. But some tips over the years that I've used. When I first put Adept in, I had a lot of sequential things. If we had 9 people reviewing, they went from Joe to Jane to Bob to Jimmy, and that process ended up being interrupted a lot of times if there's vacations or somebody that was unavailable at the time to do their approvals. And I strongly suggest you get those steps down as few as you can, and use the tool of group approvals in Adept too, because that helps streamline the process quite a bit. When you have a path that is variable, like a lot of our change notices, what we try to do is not interrupt people. So if it's a simple approval, it might just go through 2 steps and need 2 people to look it over. Where if it's in a different workflow, we might engage more people in the approval path. And one important thing when you're training folks is to differentiate between notifications and approvals. So you really only need to approve things where there's a managerial oversight, where you have resource staff that are going to be committed to some activity, or if there's some sort of a financial impact on the change. Everything else is a notification, and the notifications in Adept, you can notify people to death. Things are going through. You can get hundreds of emails sent out if you really want to go nuts on it. So the checker and approval path, there's a little bit of a hierarchy. All the documents in our CAD standards start with that same path. So that checker is then responsible to reassign the workflow to the more complicated ones. So it might go through simple approvals. Purchasing and tooling is just engaging 2 other departments. A pilot release might have more planning people involved and also some of the sales and order entry folks. Then the production release is going through about 9 or 10 people throughout the process. So we're going through a checker, a group approval, admin, and that last function I'll talk about in a minute. The final sign-in goes to publish wave, and depending on the document, the different documents reach their final destination. When we're starting out at the checker approvals, there's a small group of people. It's the same people all the time, but it's not just one. So there's a primary person, in this case, Mr. Chris Arns, who works for me, is our approval checker. But then myself and another person are the backup. So if he's out of the office, for instance, then I'll take over. And we understand that I can delete all the email notifications if he's, in the office. When you get into the more complicated workflows, I use the group approvals, but again, there's only 3 steps, and really the first one doesn't count because that's more of just an auto reject, let you get it back to the originator. So there's really only 2 steps in those approvals. And again, because we're a small facility, I'm setting that group notification to actually 18 people here, but only 9 of them are primary. And then they all have a backup. So they all get the emails and they go, okay, I know Bob's here, and they don't worry about it. Or they go, Bob's not here, I better take care of it. So because of the training and the processes we have a kind of a small organization, it's a nice effective way to keep that approval path and timeline down. I think we took things from like 3 weeks back in the day down to about 2 days using processes like this. All of those approval workflows for the change notices, they end up at this last one. So even though the CAD files are getting reviewed by the manufacturing group and getting approvals there, and we have the field instructions are getting reviewed by some of the marketing staff to look for typos because as engineers just suck at spelling. We also word things poorly, apparently. And then we have the manufacturing work instructions that have yet another workflow on how they go through. Those things might take a different amount of time. There might be on a 9 group level thing, some people aren't always on time. It stretched 3-4 days, whereas the drawings might get done right away. Well, they all stop at one final administrative step, and that would be the same group of people that started the checking process. Only the roles will switch a little bit. My documentation control specialist is responsible for implementing the change notices. So she will be the one that's doing the final implementation and gathering all these workflows together and at the same time push things through. And then when she's out, I'm up to bat. The documents go through their discrete libraries, and they have a hierarchy too. Our ECN form is the parent, and all those others are the children. So what we do at our facility, now this is unscripted a little bit. I have a development and staging library that all the engineers are in. It's an unchecked one. We're going signing things, signing in and out. And we use, again, the Adept links and send out a notification to do design reviews or lean design, checking the fit on parts and getting for ideas. So they just send an email blast out, and at the engineer's leisure, they go and open up those files and give ideas, bounce back to the engineer. But once things are ready to get released, we do an admin move into the standards library, And that engages all the publish wave and workflows that I talked about earlier. I use favorites quite a bit, and when we're looking at the ECNs in review, for instance, all I'm doing is just checking for the parts or documents that have a status of hold, and I'm only looking for that naming convention of the change notice, but the change notice has the children of all the parents, or is a parent of all the children associated with that change notice going through, and they each have their own libraries and purposes. You'll see some up there that are called ECN affected. Well, we don't have an integration with Adept in our current MRP system. So we created just certain files that have an image of the product. And this is a good way to find what change notices have transpired just by model number. So it's kind of a reverse lookup on finding out products that may have been affected by different changes going through. So kind of wrapping up what I'm talking about, but one more bonus item. Again, I said use favorites. As I was talking through all these processes, I used favorites constantly, especially shared favorites. With the training files, I'll have, specific, and I love the fact that you're going to be doing folder views. You announce that for the folder views on the favorites, because now I can gather all my training documents, have different, I'm looking forward to that because I can organize things very well now. But all of those processes that I talked about them, once I've trained people and I know that they have access to the information, I'm trying to remove crutches, right? Nobody can tell me they can't find a file because I know they have the favorite there because I personally shared the favorite with you. It's 2 clicks away. Click, click, and I know it's there. But in general, that's pretty much what I have to offer you. Small company perspective versus a lot of complicated things. But maybe there's some things that I've told you that you can incorporate and not make things so complicated for yourselves, because I've done both, So thank you for listening. Any questions, or did I bore you to death? Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark.
We got one over there.
Yep.
Yeah, we engage publish wave on those checked libraries upon final sign-in. So if we're doing a change notice, there's maybe 4 or 5 different file types going into different libraries. For instance, the field instructions are getting a publish wave action also, and those get PDF documents put into another library, and that's a watched library where we do an auto copy then to the server. But that is the source file then, and that's how we engage publish wave. I was at Nick's presentation yesterday, the training, and I think he mentioned some things that I'm going to try to incorporate. We're just doing a watched folder using publish wave that isn't even in Adept to bring files into Adept. So I like that idea. Thank you, Nick, for that. And right on. So I plan on implementing that in some areas too. But that lets us do one final sign-in on a change notice, and since they're all parent-child relationships, it's engaging publish wave for any number of 40 or 50 documents at a time in different libraries going into different destinations all at the same time, and nobody's having to do anything about it. And I like the fact that you can absorb the attributes from the source file too into the metadata. We use that for searching constantly. Okay. Thank you.
Final question. Thank you, Mark.